crisp $100 bill trembled between Marvin Holloway's pudgy fingers as he extended his hand toward Officer Reeves. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple despite the cool spring air in Jefferson Park. "Please," Marvin whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant chirping of birds. "I can't afford another ticket. My insurance will drop me." Officer Reeves glanced around the empty park, then swiftly palmed the bill, slipping it into his breast pocket with practiced ease. Their eyes met briefly, a silent contract sealed in that fleeting moment. "Drive carefully, Mr. Holloway," Officer Reeves said, tapping the roof of Marvin's sedan before walking back to his patrol car. Marvin exhaled heavily, his large frame slumping with relief against the driver's seat. He had no idea that this mundane Tuesday morning exchange would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately destroy his life. 6 months earlier, Marvin Holloway had always prided himself on being an honest man. At 43, he'd built a moderately successful accounting practice in the small city of Millfield, where he'd lived his entire life. He wasn't wealthy by any means, but he had enough a modest home on Elm Street, a reliable sedan, and the respect of his neighbors. What Marvin didn't have was time. His doctor had made that abundantly clear during his last checkup. "Your blood pressure is through the roof, Marvin," Dr. Patel had said, peering over his glasses. "And these blood sugar numbers, if you don't make some serious changes, we're looking at 5, maybe 10 years tops." Marvin had nodded solemnly, his third chin quivering slightly. He'd heard it all before: lose weight, exercise more, eat better. Easy advice to give, nearly impossible for him to follow. Food had been his comfort since childhood, his faithful companion through his parents' divorce, through high school bullying, through his own failed marriage. Food never judged, never left. His ex-wife Diane had tried to help him in the early years of their marriage. She'd prepare healthy meals, buy exercise equipment, even schedule joint therapy sessions. But after 8 years of watching him choose cream-filled donuts over their relationship, she'd given up. Their divorce had been amicable but devastating for Marvin. 5 years later, he still slept on one side of the bed, as if leaving room for someone who would never return. The only bright spot in Marvin's life was his daughter, Lily. At 19, she was everything he wasn't: vibrant, athletic, disciplined. She'd earned a partial scholarship to State University, where she was studying environmental science. Marvin covered the rest of her tuition, a financial strain that he bore gladly. Lily was his world, his one undeniable success. It was thoughts of Lily that occupied Marvin's mind as he drove home from his office that fateful evening in November. He was late for their weekly video call, the highlight of his otherwise monotonous existence. He pressed down on the accelerator, watching the speedometer creep past the limit. The roads were empty. What harm could it do? The flash of police lights in his rearview mirror answered that question. Marvin pulled over, heart pounding, as Officer James Reeves approached his vehicle. This wasn't their first encounter. Officer Reeves had ticketed Marvin twice, in the past year: once for rolling through a stop sign and once for an expired registration. Another ticket would mean points on his license and a substantial increase in his already high insurance rates. "License and registration, please," Officer Reeves said, his tone bored, mechanical. Marvin fumbled for his documents, mind racing. He couldn't afford another ticket, not with Lily's tuition payment due next week. An idea formed in his mind, repulsive, yet alluring in its simplicity. "Officer," Marvin began, voice trembling slightly, "I know I was speeding. Is there any way we could handle this differently?" He reached for his wallet, extracting 2 $50 bills. Time seemed to slow as Officer Reeves studied Marvin's face, then the money being offered. Marvin's heart hammered in his chest. What was he doing? This wasn't him. He was about to apologize, to withdraw the offer, when Officer Reeves spoke. "Put that away, Mr. Holloway," he said, glancing up and down the street. Marvin's face burned with shame as he began to tuck the bills back into his wallet. "Not there," Officer Reeves continued, lowering his voice. "In the glove compartment. And make it 300 next time. I'm doing you a favor here." Relief and disgust warred within Marvin as he did as instructed. Officer Reeves returned to his patrol car without another word, and Marvin drove home in a daze, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, he barely registered Lily's excited chatter about her biology project. His mind kept replaying the moment of corruption, his first deliberate step off the path of integrity he'd walked his entire life. It should have bothered him more, this fundamental betrayal of his values. But all he felt was relief, and a strange, unsettling sense of power. In the weeks that followed, Marvin found himself speeding more frequently, rolling through stop signs, making illegal U-turns. It wasn't conscious at first, but gradually he realized he was testing his newfound immunity. 3 more times, he was pulled over by Officer Reeves. 3 more times, money changed hands, and Marvin drove away ticket-free. The arrangement became almost comfortable, a secret agreement between 2 men who understood each other's needs. Officer Reeves needed money for what Marvin never asked, and Marvin needed freedom from consequences, a small rebellion against a life that had become increasingly restricted by his health, his finances, and his loneliness. By spring, Marvin had nearly forgotten what it felt like to follow rules. The fear of getting caught had faded, replaced by an arrogant certainty that everything could be negotiated, bought, or bartered. His accounting practice began to reflect this new philosophy, with Marvin offering creative solutions to clients who wanted to minimize their tax burdens. Nothing overtly illegal, just a toe over the ethical line, a reinterpretation of regulations that benefited his clients and, through their increased loyalty and referrals, himself. Money flowed in, and with it came a false sense of security. Marvin upgraded his wardrobe, bought a new television, even started taking Lily to expensive restaurants when she came home for weekend visits. He told himself he was finally living, finally taking what he deserved from a world that had long overlooked him. Lily noticed the change. "You seem different, Dad," she said during one of their dinner outings, picking at her salad while Marvin devoured a porterhouse steak. "Happier, maybe? But also, I don't know, more on edge." Marvin laughed it off, blaming work stress. But Lily's observation haunted him. Was he happier? Or was he just drunk on the temporary power of money, on the illusion of control it provided? He didn't have long to contemplate this question. The very next day, Marvin was running late for an important client meeting. He took his usual shortcut through Jefferson Park, driving well above the speed limit on the narrow park roads. When police lights flashed behind him, he felt only mild annoyance, already reaching for his wallet as he pulled over. But it wasn't Officer Reeves who approached his car. It was Officer Michael Torres, a younger cop Marvin had seen around town but never interacted with. "Sir, do you know why I pulled you over today?" Officer Torres asked, his expression stern but not unkind. "Probably speeding," Marvin admitted, trying to sound contrite while calculating how much cash he had on hand. "Look, officer, I'm running late for an important meeting. Maybe we could settle this quickly?" He extended a $100 bill, expecting the same understanding he'd received from Officer Reeves. Officer Torres's face hardened. "Sir, are you attempting to bribe a police officer?" The world seemed to tilt beneath Marvin. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "No, I was just—" "Step out of the vehicle, please," Officer Torres commanded, his hand moving to rest on his holster. Panic surged through Marvin. He couldn't go to jail. What would happen to his practice? To Lily's tuition? To the life he'd carefully rebuilt? "Wait," he gasped, his mind racing. "I've done this before. With Officer Reeves. He always takes it. Ask him." The moment the words left his mouth, Marvin knew he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Officer Torres's expression confirmed a mixture of disgust and grim satisfaction. "Mr. Holloway, you are under arrest for attempting to bribe a police officer," he said, reaching for his handcuffs. "And it sounds like we need to have a conversation about Officer James Reeves as well." The next few hours passed in a blur of fluorescent lights, invasive questions, and mounting terror. Marvin found himself in an interrogation room at the Millfield police station, facing Detective Sarah Chen, a woman whose piercing gaze seemed to cut through his every lie. "Mr. Holloway," she said, sliding a recorder across the metal table, I understand you have information about Officer Reeves accepting bribes. I'd like to hear everything from the beginning. Marvin's mouth went dry. I want a lawyer. Detective Chen nodded, as if she'd expected this. That's your right. But before you lawyer up, let me explain your situation. You've been caught red-handed, attempting to bribe an officer. That's a felony. Given your physical condition, prison would be particularly difficult for someone like you. Marvin flinched at the thinly veiled reference to his weight. However, Detective Chen continued, if you cooperate, if you help us build a case against Officer Reeves, the DA might be willing to reduce your charges. No promises, but it's your best shot at avoiding significant jail time. Fear and self-preservation battled with loyalty in Marvin's mind. Officer Reeves had helped him, had been his accomplice in this strange, corrupt partnership. But Reeves had also enabled Marvin's moral decline, had taken advantage of his desperation. And now, faced with the consequences of his actions, Marvin made the same choice he'd been making his entire life, the easy way out. I'll tell you everything, he whispered. Over the next 2 hours, Marvin detailed every interaction with Officer Reeves, the initial bribe, the established rate, the routine they'd developed. Detective Chen recorded it all, occasionally stopping him to clarify details. When he finished, he felt hollow, scraped out, less a man than a husk of rationalizations and regrets. We'll need you to testify, Detective Chen informed him. The DA will be in touch about the specifics of your plea agreement. Until then, you're free to go, but don't leave town. Marvin stumbled out of the police station into the harsh afternoon sunlight, his future as uncertain as his footing on the cracked concrete steps. He called his lawyer, who confirmed his worst fear 7 with cooperation. He was likely facing probation, community service, fines, and a permanent mark on his record that would devastate his accounting practice. Who would trust a convicted criminal with their finances? The arrest of Officer James Reeves made front-page news in Millfield the next day. The story painted him as a corrupt cop who had preyed on vulnerable citizens, with quotes from Police Chief Dawson promising a thorough investigation and zero tolerance for corruption within the department. Marvin's name wasn't mentioned, but it was only a matter of time. In a town as small as Millfield, secrets had a short shelf life. Lily called that evening, her voice tight with concern. Dad, there's a rumor going around that you're involved in that police corruption case. Someone from Millfield posted about it in our university's local news group. Marvin closed his eyes, shame washing over him in a suffocating wave. Lily, tell me it's not true, she pleaded. Tell me you didn't bribe a police officer. He couldn't lie to her, not to Lily. I made a mistake, he admitted, his voice breaking. Several mistakes. I thought I was just finding a shortcut. I didn't think about the consequences. The silence that followed was worse than any condemnation. When Lily finally spoke, her voice was different, colder. I have to go, Dad. I have a test to study for. Lily, please. I'll call you later. I need some time to process this. The line went dead, and with it, a vital piece of Marvin's heart. He sat in his darkened living room, the weight of his choices pressing down on him with more force than his physical bulk ever had. The trial was set for July, giving Marvin 3 months to watch his life unravel thread by thread. His clients began to cancel appointments as word spread. His neighbors avoided eye contact when he collected his mail. Even his favorite diner, where he'd eaten breakfast every Sunday for 15 years, suddenly had no tables available when he called for a reservation. Lily's calls became less frequent, their conversations stilted and brief. She didn't come home for spring break, claiming a research project needed her attention. Marvin sent her tuition payment with a note of apology. The check was cashed, the note never acknowledged. Officer Reeves, meanwhile, denied everything. His lawyer released statements claiming Marvin was lying to save himself, painting him as a desperate man willing to slander an honest police officer to avoid punishment. Some in the community believed it the word of a lifelong civil servant against that of an overweight, increasingly isolated accountant with financial troubles. As the trial approached, Marvin's lawyer negotiated a plea deal that would keep him out of prison in exchange for his testimony. The day before he was set to appear in court, Marvin received a text message from an unknown number. "Walk away tomorrow. Say you lied, or everyone learns about your creative accounting, especially the IRS." Marvin's blood ran cold. His questionable tax practices, who could know about those except his clients? He hadn't kept records, had conducted most of those transactions in cash. But if someone had evidence, if his clients had been recording their meetings, he didn't sleep that night, weighing his options in the dark. By morning, he'd made his decision. In the courthouse, Marvin took the stand, avoiding Officer Reeves's glare from the defendant's table. He recounted their arrangement as rehearsed, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. The prosecutor guided him through the details, establishing dates, amounts, locations. When it came time for cross-examination, Officer Reeves's attorney approached with a predatory smile. "Mr. Holloway," he began, "isn't it true that you're facing financial difficulties due to your daughter's college tuition?" "Objection, relevance," the prosecutor called. "Goes to motive, Your Honor," Reeves's attorney countered. "I'm establishing that Mr. Holloway has a reason to fabricate these accusations for a more lenient sentence." "I'll allow it," the judge ruled. "Answer the question, Mr. Holloway." Marvin swallowed hard. "Yes, I've had some financial strain, but—" "And isn't it true that you've engaged in questionable accounting practices to alleviate that strain?" The courtroom seemed to shrink around Marvin. This was it, the threat made real. If he answered truthfully, he'd face additional charges. If he lied under oath, he'd be committing perjury. In that moment, Marvin Holloway made his final choice. "No," he stated firmly, "that's not true. I've never engaged in any unethical practices in my business." The defense attorney's smile widened. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter Defense Exhibit C into evidence." He approached the bench with a folder, then displayed its contents on the courtroom's projection screen. There, in Marvin's own handwriting, were notes detailing how he'd helped clients hide income, claim illegitimate deductions, and manipulate their financial statements. Client names were clearly visible, amounts meticulously recorded. Marvin recognized the pages immediately. They'd been stolen from his home office, from a locked drawer in his desk. "Mr. Holloway," the defense attorney continued, "do you maintain that you've never engaged in unethical practices, given this evidence to the contrary?" The prosecutor was on her feet, objecting to the introduction of evidence not previously disclosed, demanding a sidebar. The judge called both attorneys forward, their heated whispers barely audible to the courtroom. Marvin sat frozen on the witness stand, aware that regardless of the legal battle unfolding before him, his fate was sealed. He'd lied under oath. The evidence against him was damning. And Officer Reeves, the man he'd intended to bring down, was smiling at him with the serene confidence of someone who had already won. The trial ended in chaos. Officer Reeves was acquitted, the jury finding reasonable doubt given Marvin's compromised credibility. Marvin himself was charged with perjury and multiple counts of tax fraud, the investigation into his accounting practices revealing years of minor but consistent violations. In the end, Marvin received 18 months in prison, a sentence that might have been longer if not for his previously clean record and the judge's acknowledgement of his cooperation in the Reeves case, failed though it was. The day before he reported to the minimum security facility where he would serve his time, Marvin visited his doctor for a final checkup. Dr. Patel examined him silently, noting the 20 pounds Marvin had lost through stress rather than discipline. "Your blood pressure is still dangerously high," he said finally, "and prison healthcare. It's not ideal, Marvin. You need to take care of yourself in there. Follow their diet plan, exercise when you can." Marvin nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. "Has Lily called?" he asked. Dr. Patel was his daughter's godfather, had been since the day she was born. Dr. Patel's expression softened with pity. "No, but I'm sure she will, in time. Focus on yourself now, on getting healthy, on serving your sentence with dignity. The rest will follow." But Marvin knew better. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. Some choices altered the course of a life so fundamentally that there was no returning to the person you once were, the life you once had. The next morning, as spring sunshine bathed Jefferson Park in golden light, Marvin drove slowly past the spot where Officer Reeves had first accepted his bribe. He could almost see himself there, a different Marvin, still corruption-free, still worthy of his daughter's respect. That Marvin had faced hardships, had struggled with his health and his finances, but he'd faced those struggles with integrity. That Marvin had been poor in wallet but rich in spirit. This Marvin, the real Marvin, pulled into the prison parking lot exactly on time, carrying a small duffel bag containing the few personal items he was allowed. He surrendered his car keys, his wallet, his freedom. As the heavy doors closed behind him, he thought of that crisp $100 bill he'd extended to Officer Reeves all those months ago. The price of silence, it turned out, was far higher than he could ever have imagined. Like if you enjoyed the story,